Is there a reason why we as basketball fans put so much stock into the production of basketball players that perform in the summer league? I mean, don't get me wrong. I am, I would dare to say, one of the biggest fans of basketball in the entire world. However, is there really a correlation between summer league success and NBA success? Maybe it's just the impressions or the monetary value that are attached to those impressions, but I feel like every summer we end up watching highlights reels and reading articles that say something to the effect of X player is the next LeBron or KD or Kobe Bryant. And not only do I think that is incredibly unfair to the new talent coming into the league, I don't think that is very realistic. Now, don't get me wrong, I, like probably a lot of people, tried to view the Summer League and gauge the talent based off of what I've seen on the floor. And for a lot of the people that are participating in Summer League, especially the new draftees, this is the first time that you've played organized basketball in at least a month, and your competition level has been raised. For the kids that are coming from college, a lot of the kids that you played against aren't going to go pro. They aren't going to have a professional basketball career. They're going to be accountants and architects and whatever they decide to do. So now that you are playing professional basketball, now that you're playing against people who are hungry and they want an NBA roster spot, your level of competition has increased, and your play because of that has to also increase. So I think that it is a really good gauge of talent, but how important is it really? A couple weeks ago now, probably, I put out a short form video on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts talking about my grades for the people that I got to see play in the Summer League going from S to F. And even while I was making it, I was wondering if this actually meant anything. I think probably the most recent example of someone having a bad Summer League performance not translating to having a bad NBA career is obviously Jaylen Brown, who won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, won a championship, and then the Finals MVP. And his first 3 games in the Summer League were objectively very bad, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I will say that after I put this list up and we talk about all these players and what grade I gave them, I'm not sure how this actually will translate or if this means anything at all. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. Alex Sarr, I had a lot of hope for, and I believe that they still have a lot of potential going into their first NBA season. But they're in the F tier because of their draft selection. He went number 2 overall to the Wizards, and he just never figured it out on the offensive end. Now, I think that he's going to be an absolute menace defensively, but he's going to be put in a position in Washington where he is demanding the ball a lot, where he is going to have a reasonable amount of shot attempts, even sharing the floor with Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole. So when he has those opportunities, he is going to have to show that he is at least respectable enough on the floor to guard him like an actual threat offensively. Because in today's NBA, you can't put somebody out on the floor that's a defensive specialist. The days of a Ben Wallace are long gone. So if you don't have the offensive edge to you, I don't know how valuable that you can be on the floor. Do I think he has time to fix it? Yeah, absolutely I do. But his Summer League performance was very disappointing to me. Next in the D tier, we have Bronny, and if you have followed my socials for any amount of time, I'm kind of a Bronny truther, not because I believe that he can be the same kind of player that his dad is and continues to be. I actually think the opposite. Because of Bronny's own expectations coming into the league, he said he wanted to be a Derek White, a Drew Holiday, an Alex Caruso, a Pat Beverly. And I think that he still has that ability, and he displayed that during Summer League. The ability to shoot the passing lane, the ability to play great lockdown on-ball defense, and his ability to chase down shots from a transition standpoint is almost identical to his dad. I think that portion right there is actually the only thing that is identical to LeBron James Sr. So I think he still has a lot of work to do. I imagine that he is going to spend a lot of time in the G League, but because his ability on the offensive side of the ball was demonstrated to me in the last 2 games of Summer League in particular, he ended up in D tier rather than F with Alex Sarr. In the C tier, I only had 2 players, Zach Ricochet and Rob Dillingham. I wasn't disappointed, but I also wasn't wowed. This is just the meh category. For Zach, I think that the expectations being a number 1 overall pick are pretty lofty, even in a draft class like this without a defined superstar. but he didn't show me enough on either side of the ball for me to put him any higher, and he didn't disappoint me in any of those categories to put him any lower. Now, for Rob Dillingham, he had a really nice couple of games throughout the Summer League, and again, I think that there's a potential for all of these players on this list to have good careers, but it just wasn't in the cards for them in the Summer League. Now, I do think that Rob is falling into a very favorable position for him. Now, the pick that was used on him was San Antonio's before it got traded to Minnesota. But because he's playing in Minnesota now, because he is going to presumably be coming off the bench, at least for the first little bit of the season, sharing bench unit roles with Naz Reid, I think that puts him in a very favorable position to not only score, but to learn the game and get a confidence about you going against bench caliber players. And I think that if he did not have the confidence already, playing with someone like Anthony Edwards will definitely help you in that department as well. I'm not going to highlight everybody in these next two categories, but for B, I was impressed with what I saw on top of being in good situations. Like, for instance, Ron Holland. I think that going to Detroit was a confusing pick for a lot of people because people view Detroit and they view Cade Cunningham specifically as needing more shooting, needing more ability to stretch the floor than having another long, lengthy wing like Asar Thompson. But I think with that new shooting coach that Detroit has hired, I think there's a real scenario where Ron Holland becomes a respectable catch-and-shoot player, on top of the fact that his wingspan is ridiculous and his athletics are off the chart, and he's going to be able to put pressure on the rim in that pick-and-roll game with Cade Cunningham. And then for other guys like Zach Edey, he wasn't on the floor long, but I do think that he is going to present a lot of matchup problems for a lot of different kinds of players in the NBA. I don't think that he's going to be this versatile defender. I don't think that he's going to be like a Rob Williams where you can cover baseline to baseline and still protect the rim. But he's 7'4", so he's going to be a good shot blocker. He's going to play next to Jaren Jackson Jr., and both of those players are going to prove to be so valuable and to wreak havoc on any attackers of the rim. Other players in this category like Dalton Knecht, Cody Williams, and Jared McCain, I don't think that their teams are going to expect too much from them. I think that they are going to be in positions where you could play the long game, that you could develop them slowly. Dalton Knecht is obviously one of the better three-point shooters coming out of the college game. Same with Jared McCain. He showed a lot of promise, especially in the last couple months of the season, his ability to be a catch-and-shoot guy or to be an off-the-dribble shooter. And for Cody Williams, I think that he just has all the intangibles to be able to provide at that next level. But again, all three of those player scenarios aren't going to require them to be saviors of franchises or to even produce at a very high level from the get-go. Cody Williams, the Jazz aren't going to be in a scenario where they have to compete now. Jared McCain, best case scenario, is going to be a fifth option on his team, and Dalton Knecht may not even play a lot this season. So because of their intangibles, because of their plug-and-play ability in those offenses, I gave them all Bs. I want to spend a little more time on a couple players in A tier, but I will say from the get-go that I think that Buzelis and Bub Carrington are going to have really solid rookie seasons. Buzelis in particular showed me a lot more than I had expected on the playmaking end, and his ability to read the floor really impressed me. I think at the bare minimum for him, he is going to be a backup option as a primary or a secondary ball handler in that Bulls offense, especially if Lonzo Ball isn't able to stay healthy and if Kobe White doesn't take that playmaker step that I expect him to. And for Bub Carrington, I think that he's in a good position too, because for the Wizards, they're going to be bad. We can be honest about that. And I think they may be so bad that they will try to offload contracts, probably Jordan Poole and probably Kyle Kuzma. So there are going to be a lot of shots open for him. And I think, as of recording right now, that he is my actual dark horse pick for the Rookie of the Year. Now, Kel'el Ware, I have been really high on for a long time. You can check my socials. I have the receipts to prove that. Coming into the draft, there was this narrative about him that he had an attitude problem, that he didn't respect authority or something along the lines of that. And I think if there was ever a place that was going to break him of this potential bad habit, it is Miami. And he proved in the Summer League that he is going to be such a threat. He's going to be Kristaps Porzingis light. His ability to put pressure on the rim as a lob threat, super important in that offense. His ability to stretch the floor once someone breaks down the defense, also super important. And next to Bam, he is already probably the best backline defender that team has. So I think that his ability, that little trifecta of abilities that he has there, is going to be invaluable to the Miami Heat. I've also been super high on Donovan Clingan. I think that if he came out to the draft last year, that he would have been a top 5 pick, but he went back to UConn for a second year to develop some of his game that was missing, and particularly if you're watching the UConn games, the game that he had been working on the hardest, the ones that he tried to polish the most, was this high post offense facilitating, that role that you see guys like Jokic and Domantas Sabonis fulfill for their teams. His ability to see the floor, he's 7'2", so he has the ability to see over everybody, and his ability to feel the game in a way that benefits his team is going to be really valuable to the Portland Trailblazers. My only question really going into this next season is, what do they do with DeAndre Ayton? Because I don't see a scenario where they play both of them at the same time. I don't think that this is a 4-5 scenario, because neither of them have shown the ability yet to stretch their game out to the three-point line. Now, Donovan has a good enough form mechanically to do that, but I wouldn't expect that from him at least until year 3 or 4, maybe even 5. So I don't know what they're going to do with that logjam at center. And then there's other questions for the Blazers as well. What do you do with Grant's contract? What do you do with Anthony Simons? How do you develop Scoot? What's the next step for them? I think the Blazers have a lot of questions to answer, but I think that Donovan is the answer to at least one of those questions. And then lastly, in the A tier, Stephon Castle. Again, I have been super high on, check my socials. Not only was I impressed with what he could do in Summer League, but I think that he fell into maybe the perfect scenario. Not only did you get to play with Victor Wembanyama, the very future of the league, but you get to learn the reins. Like, you get to learn the game from arguably a top 3 point guard of all time in Chris Paul. So you add those two things on top of the fact that you are going to learn from Coach Popovich. I really just don't see a scenario better than that. But for your Summer League production in particular, he showed so much potential and so much growth from the college game to the Summer League on his efficiency around the rim, his ability to attack the rim and draw defenders in to kick out. And he even showed his improved three-pointing shooting mechanics, which I think is going to be super valuable with that pick and pop and pick and roll game with Victor down the line. So again, with all of these things going for Stephon Castle, I think that at bare minimum, he's going to have a very solid 10-year career in the league. A lot of good players in the Summer League this year, but I think one that stands head and shoulders above the rest is Reed Sheppard. Averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game, 3 steals, a block and a half, and most importantly, he averaged 20 while shooting horrendously from 3. I think he shot like 19% or something god-awful. My only real question for him, because his production in Summer League doesn't give me this inclination at all, but my only question for him is his fit. Obviously, he is either a primary ball handler or a secondary ball handler, so how do they handle the Fred VanVleet contract in Houston? How do they manage his play time? Do they trade him? What do they do? I see a scenario where he comes off the bench to start the year. So their 5 would be Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Amon Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Şengün. I think that could do a lot of damage. But I think eventually you are going to have to replace Fred VanVleet with Reed Sheppard and run it that way. The only other scenario that I could see happening is shifting everybody down. So Fred VanVleet at the 1, Reed Sheppard at the 2, Jalen Green at the 3, Jabari at the 4, and Alperen Şengün at the 5. But then you're pushing out Amon Thompson, who I think has a really high ceiling as a defender. So I think the only question I have for Reed is, how is his skill and ability going to fit in that Houston offense? But that isn't about him at all, really. I think that great players find a way to fit rather than allowing a coach to put them in a position where they could be typecast or pigeonholed or whatever term you want to use, but I think that Shepard Reed probably gave me not the best Summer League performance ever, but the most hope out of a Summer League performance I've seen in a long time. That is all I have for today, though. What did you think about this Summer League? Who impressed you? Who disappointed you? And who do you think is going to have the best career out of the bunch? I'm working on a different video right now about the Olympics and the roster construction and how I think we can improve on that, so be on the lookout for that. Also, how do we feel about the production value increase? I got this mic that plugs directly into my phone. It was RGB. It was like $40. Really great purchase. So again, that's all I have for now. Follow me on my socials. There's going to be a link in the description if you want to keep up with me in short form content or any other kind of way. So that's all I have for today. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. And I'll see you in the next one.